Okay, so yesterday we were talking about this calculator, and then I just created the calculator that should look like something like this. Well, yesterday we were working on the plus, on the addition only, and then we just made something that looks like this by creating the labels. I need 3 of them. Why? Because I have 3 labels, 1, 2, and 3. And you remember yesterday I was talking about the fact that I always give a special code to my variable names, so I can know their data type just by looking at the name of the variable. This saves me so much time in trying to figure out what is the data type of this variable, or even just by looking at the code I just can see something if this is not the place for a label to be or a text field to be, and so on. It shows quite clearly. So I always do something like that. And so now I just organize them into labels, text fields, and buttons. Well, it doesn't matter, you can just put them in any order, it doesn't matter. So now I created first this class which extends a JFrame. Now all these are going to be initialized in the constructor. That's what I have here. You can see in the class I have all the variables and one special method, just the constructor. I don't have any other things. I could have other things, but for now I don't. I will have other things that I'll show you, just how to better organize these things. Now you remember also in the constructor I'm just going to initialize these are the things for the window itself, the frame, the JFrame. I'm just making this call to the super class. What's the superclass of this calculator form? What is its superclass? JFrame. It's a JFrame, and then when I'm calling it with a text as an argument, this text becomes the title here. So that's what I'm going to see here. So then the set size, I was telling you that we needed to try to find a size that will make it look good. So we tried to make the size that will allow us to have something that looks like this, instead of just, for example, if we don't pay attention to much of that and put any size, that's a bit too much, we are going to be seeing some really weirdly scrambled components. But now I can just put them back closer together by doing something like this. But now, after trials and error, I found that this gives us a good result. That's why I just kept those values. Actually, there's a better way, but this is just the beginning. We're just learning how to use these graphical user interfaces, and we're doing it manually. That's why we're not getting a lot of help doing so. And back in the day, people were not having any help in design and user interfaces, but they were doing it like this, counting the pixels and putting some kind of, okay, I want this to be there and here and so on. So it was not as easy as it is now. So anyways, we were talking now about the set size. If you remember, we had to talk. We have a discussion about the layout. What's the layout? The purpose of a layout? To order the components inside that frame. So it tells the components how are they going to be related to each other. So this flow layout is a very simple layout that just puts one next to the other. And then if there's no more space, wait, go back to the line and keep doing so. That's why if I just run and then resize this to make something maybe longer, I might have all in one line. Because that's how the flow layout works. It just keeps adding things, and then until when it doesn't find enough space to do anything. So, okay, I'm just trying to. So when there's no more space, well, it goes down, and that's the idea. So that's this new flow layout. Of course, everything needs to be imported, so we don't have to memorize this because NetBeans allows you to help you with bringing it. But these are coming from AWT packages, and some of them are from the Swing package. Yes?
What's the action event?
The action event, this is used in the action of a button. When I click on a button, something happened there, and there's a parameter that is used there. I'm going to talk about it later. So just remind me if I forget. So, but now I'm just going just line by line until this set default close operation, which does what? It specifies how the close button, this button over here, works. Now this X button here, now if I click on it, now it closes because it's exit on close. If it was something else, and what are other things where this, for example, there's nothing, or dispose on close, whatever, do nothing on close is, for example, now I'm going to be having a problem exiting, closing this application. Now it's running, and if I click on this one, it will not stop, it will not exit. So the only way now to exit it is to just abruptly stop the program, to cancel running the task. Now it just stopped. Yes?
How the compiler know? Is it here? The X?
Is it what?
Is it here in this side? This position?
Oh, okay. You mean how does the compiler know that there's this button over here, there? Well, this comes with the JFrame.
Okay.
With the JFrame, these are coming up like by default. We'll have to maximize and close in, and so they come. Actually, if you remember, we were looking at JFrame. JFrame is extending some frame, which extends a window, which extends a container. So there's a lot of different components, a lot of different methods that I'm inheriting, and also the different interfaces that are being implemented. So in this case, so many interfaces are implemented. If you look at here, it's also menu, container, and window constants, accessible. There's a lot of different things actually. This window constants seems to be the window constants. It's just an interface with only constants, nothing. Just because we get those do nothing and these hide on a close and dispose. These are the options that are available, and we just get them by using this interface. That just by implementing it, we're not having to implement any method because it doesn't have any abstract method to implement, but it just gives us those variables. So, yes.
The sizes in the calculator form.
The sizes?
Yeah, the size.
The size of what? This one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I make it variables?
Yeah, of course you can make it variable if you want. Yes, you can make it some. Well, it's up to you. If you make it variable, you want to make it change. How do you want to make it change? Well, it's up to you. How do you want to program? How do you want to put those values? So it's up to you. Again, this is just the initial values, because if you noticed, I can change those values by doing something like this now. I changed them. Now those values changed. But these are just initial values that I'm choosing how to show them. If you don't want them to be like this, you want to calculate them based on the screen size, there's some other calculations that you can do.
If I make them variables.
That's what I'm trying to say. If you want to make them variables, you have to make them, those variables have some values that are coming from somewhere. A variable is just a place when you put a value that can change. So what are you going to put in it? It has to come from somewhere. So even if it's a variable, okay, let's declare int x, but you have to put something in that x. So where are you going to put it from? So you have to decide. You can get something that calculates the size of your screen and divide it by 10, and this is you're going to be the width or whatever. So there's some kind of calculation that needs to be done. Then you can put it here, no problem. But you have to put a value in that variable, and that's it. So instead of this, let's just go back and put this exit on close, which is more convenient, which is like normally what things should happen. Now, this is what we did. This is something not new to what we've seen yesterday. So now, what we're doing now, I'm initializing each component one at a time. So every label, and every text field, I'm putting whatever it needs to be done with it. So now, as you can see, I'm preparing the label, and I group them in this like unit, because this is how they should look. Something. Let me just. Oh, I have to stop it. Let me write now. So it's like this number one and the text field of that number one are coming together, so that's why I just grouped them. So logically I can just know which part I'm working on my user interface just by having this grouping that I did. So now this is the label one, I put a value inside of it, and then this is the text field one, and this number 10 means like how many characters it can hold. So it shows me how many characters, something like that. So I did this small, so put 10 here, and then this add now adds the label in that order. It adds the label, then the text field. If I flip it around, I'm going to see the text field first and then the label second. So it's going to be, the order are going to be different. It's going to be different. So that's why I make sure that I put them in, I add them in an order. So I add them where? This add is coming from my superclass, which is JFrame. So I'm adding to the JFrame, which is adding to this special JFrame, which is the calculator form. And I'm doing the same thing for label 2, text field number 2, same thing, exactly copy and paste and just change the 2's. And then we have also the same thing for the results. In the result, well, we have only these two things, but there's no, and I'm adding those two results here. But I added something else. I just added it like a few minutes ago, because this set editable is something that I can change in this text field. You see, this text field is changeable. It's editable. I can change it. Of course, this first one I can change. I'm supposed to, because I need to put some values there. Same thing for the second one. For the third one, I don't want to be allowing any values to be entered. I'm using it as if it's a label actually. But it just gives me the look like it's a text field, which is, I'm using that look. But I'm using it actually just as a label. I'm just displaying something. I'm not capturing any information. I'm not using it as an input. It's just like an output. The same way that a label works. So you can do that with those nice teeth, by the way. And then you can just use them, instead of using this text field, you can use a label if you want. But in our case, just for the user interface, we use the text field. But if you want to disable that text field, you just set this text field, which is the result, to be editable false. Now, if you set it this way, what is going to happen is that you're not able to do anything. You can just see some results, but you cannot, you cannot change anything. You can select maybe somehow, but it doesn't allow you to change. You type whatever you want, it's not going to be doing anything. So that's what this does. So if I just comment it and then start again, now you can see that I can put whatever, do something, which is what I don't want to have.
That means do it one time if you don't comment it.
What do you mean one time?
If you remove the comment.
Like now?
Or no. It's allowed to do it one time.
No, you can do it as many times as you want. It just doesn't allow you to change whatever it is here. That's what it doesn't allow you to. But if you do, for example, here, I can do something like this, like that, like this, like that. So whatever, it's going to keep working. So this is the actually there's a lot of different things that I can do with those text fields and labels and etc. So we're going to see few as in the set. You see the setters. You can do a lot of different kind of things. You can change the background color. If, for example, I don't know. Let's just this comes with the color yellow. Fine. Let's now if I run, and you can see something like what this result is all about. But there's a lot of things that I can do, but let's just now focus on the main things. But I'm just telling you that I would like you to just be curious and try to find out what other things you can do with those text fields and labels and buttons. Well, you can, first of all, one of the ways is just use the set and a space, and it will allow you to see a lot of different things. Set border. Oh, what is border? What is thing? So just do some kind of testing. The other thing is the better way to do is just to go for the help, or maybe something the Javadoc of JFrame. So this is going to give you the documentation of a JFrame, what's in it. It gives you some idea, and then it explains a lot of different nested classes and the field summary and some constructor summary. It gives you different kinds of constructors and what each one is need to do, and a lot of methods that gives you some indication what you can do with them. So this is, as you can see, there's a lot of things, but for example, this is just give you the, okay, I would like to have something that sets content pane all over. Just click on it, it gives you the details. Okay, this is what it does, and so on. So this is like a way to have a look at exactly what's the detail of that class, because you cannot cover all the different classes that exist in a course. There's so many, and there are a lot of methods, and there's a lot of things to look at. So that's why you have to learn how to fetch for that information, to look for it. So now we're done with this thing. All from up to here is just setting up the user interface, how it will look like. And we haven't added the buttons yet. Now we're going to be adding those buttons. So the buttons are 4. So I declared 4 buttons, and then I'm adding things to them. First of all, just add this plus, as you can see here. The action listener is where the action happens, and then this is where they put the code that things should happen, but I'm going to go back to that. But what you want to see, just every button is just I instantiate a new J button with some text that should be on that button. Of course, I can change the colors, I can change the font size and things like that. And the same thing for the subtract and multiply. And each one of them, after I just prepare it, I just add it to the list of controls that are inside that. As you can see here, at the end I prepare the multiply and then I add it. I prepare the divide and then I add it. So that's, I keep adding one by one when I add them. That's why I have them in that order. Now, what we did yesterday, yes.
What about divide?
What about what?
Divide. You said when you divide by 0.
Yes, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. When we divide by 0, we should not be allowing the division by 0, right? So we'll get back to that in a few minutes, inshallah. Now, what I'd like to do is I would like to talk about this add action listener, right? Because this is something that I just did yesterday, and it was quite of a new thing for you, right? Because what we used to do is we used to create a new class that implements an action listener, and then we put the code in that class, and then we just put that in a new instance of a class there. So I'm going to show you different ways how to do these kind of things. So that's my point of doing this exercise, actually. So now what we used to do, in like what I introduced to you, is that we do some kind of listener, and then let's just implement, for example, this button add. Let's call it addition listener. So this is going to be my listener that is going to be implementing the action listener. When I'm implementing the action listener, I have only one method to implement, which is called the action performed. And you see this action event? This is the data type of the argument that needs to be given. That was your question. What is this action event? What is it used for? Well, it's used as an argument here, sometimes to be given some extra information about that event, like which button was clicked. Is it like right click or left click, for example, that click on that button? This is different kind of information that are related to the event that is happening. So now what I need to do is just here I can put the code of what happened. But look, there's a problem here when I'm using it this way, because I don't have this tf1. So I need to find a way to have to exchange the information between this class over here and this calculator. So now how to do that? Well, one way is maybe make it an inner class. Yeah, a class inside this class. For example, I can make it as an inner class here. Why? Because once I have it as an inner class, I can have access to these text fields and all the different private variables of that class. That's what inner classes, if you remember, was given as a benefit. So now I'm saying that this thing here is implementing an action listener, but actually it's just only used for this button that is going to be used here. But I'm just seeing an error message. It's something is expected, and I don't see it. And it doesn't need to be public. Actually, it should be private, because this is just belonging to this class. So this.
One block.
Oh, just because, yeah, this is not needed. This thing here, yeah. And there's a lot of, there's so many things that are embedded. I don't need this and don't need that. I did a bad copy and paste. So let's just push this back here. So inside that calculator form, I have this action listener, which is a class that implements this action listener, this addition listener that implements action listener, and this addition listener is going to be used here as new addition listener. So I'm just instantiating a new instance of this inner class, which has only one purpose: to give me the code to execute when I'm clicking on the button, when an event happens on that button. So which button? This add. Now when an event happens to the add, what I'm doing, just forget about this here, what I'm doing is just, I need to give the details of what I'm doing here. I'm going to this new addition listener, and this is the code that is going to be run at that time, which what it does, it just takes the text field, get the text of the text field, and convert it to double. Remember yesterday we were using int. Now I changed it to double because I want to see real numbers. So now this double is going to be put inside number 1, which is a double. And I do the same thing with the text field. I get the text from the text field, I convert it from text to a number, to a double number, and then I put it in another variable here. Now that I have the two numbers, I can do the addition, and because the result of a text field is only dealing with text, so I need to convert this to a text. So that's why I'm calculating and converting the double to the text. So this is how I do that. This is the calculation, and this is where I convert it to a text, and I put it in this result. Actually, I put these variables just to show you the steps, but I can just squeeze them in one line. That's what I did actually here. And if you want to look at it, you see this is the same thing, but it's in one line. For the subtraction, this is taking a number from a text field, number 1, convert it to a double, and subtracting it to this number converted from a text field, and then the result is converted to a text, and this text I'm putting it as a text of the text field result. So it's all packed in one line. It's more than one line. I just made it more than one line to make it easier for you to read, but I can just make it in one line. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't disturb me, because I know the different parts. So I left those different parts here for you, so you can just see them step by step. Convert the first number, convert the second number, do the calculation. Actually, I can even convert it even further by doing something like this. And then this result, convert it to what is that? Oh, because I have two results, same values, so text result, I don't know, text. So this is just the result text, and that one is the result, the number, the result value. Let's just rename this. So this is the value of the result, this is the text of the result, and then I get the value, and then I convert it to a text, and then I add that text to the text field so I can display it. So these are the steps that I can just, again, squeeze them into one instruction, one statement. So again, now I'm using this inner class, and you see the advantage of that inner class as opposed to what we did yesterday. Yesterday we did something because as an external class, we did not require anything. Let's just get back here. You see this inner class, this ending listener that was implementing the action listener. This ending listener, it was instantiated, but it's attached to the button that we were using, but it didn't require anything from here. What it does, it exits the program, so it doesn't require any exchange of information from outside of this class. While in our case, here we do. This action listener, this action performed from the action listener, it needs some information. It needs the data from the text fields. So that's why I cannot have it as some kind of external class, or I need to find a way, put some getters and setters, and then so I can use it, which is not really as straightforward. I mean, it's quite impossible. I mean, quite hard to do. So that's one way to do that. The other way is to do this kind of thing, which is an anonymous class. I'm implementing the action listener, but in a class that doesn't have any name. Here I give it a name. This addition listener, it implements the action listener, and what it has this code. So I'm doing exactly the same thing, except that I'm not giving the class, I'm not giving the class name, I'm just giving an anonymous class that implements an action listener. And if you implement an action listener, you have to implement this method, so that's what I'm doing. Is that okay with you? And the rest is basically the same thing. I'm just copying and pasting, and the same thing. I just would like to do something maybe better. Let's change it just to show you something. You see this code here? The code that is inside this multiplication, I'm going to move it and do something like multiply. How about this? What is this multiply? Well, it doesn't exist, but I can create it. Oh no, I don't want. Oh, yeah, I just realized that if I have it here as a private, I'm not going to be able to see it. What I was planning to do is I wanted to do something like this. This is the private void multiply. Oops, multiply. That's what I was planning to do. And then in that multiply, just put the code, right? And here I'm just going to call this multiply here. However, there's a problem, because this is detached from this, so it doesn't see this multiply. This multiply is not visible for it. Why? Because this is like in a class. It's an anonymous class, but it's a class. So this is like a separate class as of the one that we're here. It's not like an inner class, so there's no way for them to be connected together. So that's why you cannot have access to this method from that class. So that's why this is not something that's going to work for me as I wanted. But I could do whatever was suggested here. Is I can just, but it's not really necessary, but I can put the code here. I can put the code here, and then here I can put the code of something, but you see, it's not of use. There's no advantage in doing that. It just makes me do more code. So I'm just going to cancel that and leave it as this. What is the what? Yeah, okay. So now for the multiplication there's no verification to do, but for the division I need to do something. Before dividing I need to check. First of all, let's get me this number of the text field 2 and convert it to a number and check. Is that number different from 0? Because if it's 0, I don't want to display to make the calculation. So if it's equal to 0, it's going to go to the else and do this. Just display error, because you cannot divide by 0. Or maybe you can do something, division by 0. That's even more explicit. So you're displaying a message. So now what I'm doing is that I'm taking the number 2 from the text field 2, convert it to a number, and then check it. If it's different than 0, then I can do the operation, which is convert the number 1, divide it by the number 2, and then make it a text and save it inside the text field result. If not, then just show division by 0. And that's why here, inside this code of action performed, I have an if, an else, and do something. I can have a lot of different things. I can have a while, for, whatever it's needed, I can just do it there. Whatever I need to do when I click on the button, then I have to put it there. It could be just create a new instance of whatever, and then look for in an array, or initialize something, and so on. Now, when I run it, I can have these numbers. If I put 0, for example, well, the addition will work. It doesn't check. The subtraction, the multiplication, and the division is going to give me the message that I mentioned. Okay?